welcome back. You're in the C Space Studio here at CES. I am James Kotecki, and joining me is Patrick Goot, VP Adlook US. Welcome to the C Space Studio.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Adlook US, how do you define the brand here at the beginning of 2024?
We define the brand as privacy-centric. We think about, we launched in the US about a year and a half ago. May have been a little bit too soon. Our key focus is around privacy.
Okay.
And with Google continuing to push out cookie deprecation over and over, the industry got a little phased out from that for a bit. Now cookies as of January 4th, finally the first 1%, 30 million is out. And so we've seen a great uptick in conversations around privacy, hope, opportunity in terms of scaling what the future is going to be.
And for folks who may not be familiar with the term cookie deprecation, but have certainly experienced it in their own lives, folks here at CES may be beyond the C-Space area, maybe not marketing, advertising folks. How do you explain that to people, and can you give us a snapshot?
So actually, it's funny, I was talking to Media Post yesterday. Cookies turned 30 this year, right? So happy 30th.
Yeah, the ability to track you over the web.
But so what they do is, the way I envision it is, think about when you go to any website, you have a backpack, right? And when you get to that backpack, all the stuff in that backpack are cookies that help advertisers and publishers identify who you are. That backpack is going away. And so to be able to aggregate that is going to change the way that marketers talk to consumers.
And so what are you talking about here at CES? How do you bring this message to folks, and what are you saying? Yeah,
so it's about transition plans. Like, we would think about testing plans, but essentially it's a fundamental shift in the way marketers and consumers start interacting digitally, right? And so we talk about what that transition looks like, the kind of technology that's required to evolve to meet consumers where they expect advertisers to be met, and ensure that we're not just trying to replace a cookie with an ID, but actually evolve the way that media is going to be bought in order to help advertisers regain trust, which I think they've lost with marketers over time.
You mentioned consumer expectations. What do consumers expect? I mean, we talk about privacy, we talk about people being willing to pay for things like streaming services with advertising, or maybe take a reduced price on that. So clearly people are open to advertising on some level, but where are consumers today? I
think it's around transparency, right? So we just, they need truth in it, is what I would think. So like, we've done a study over the past, from 22 to 23, hidden emails came out. There's been a 10x jump in the number of consumers that hide their emails, right? And so I think consumers choose anonymity when they have it, and when they know what's happening to them, they're more comfortable with it, right? It's a lot of times, I was at a meeting last night, and we were talking about Ozempic, right? Because who doesn't talk about that now? Relevant.
The weight loss drug.
Right, and so we're thinking about, hey, we're taking bets on who's going to get the first Ozempic ad on their phone, because we think that our phones are listening to what we're saying. And I think that mentality of consumers not trusting the space that we're in, that needs to shift, and they're expecting that to shift for marketers to regain trust. And I hope that cookie-less deprecation helps that happen.
So what are some specific ways that you do hope that marketers can regain trust?
Yeah, so I think it's evolving the way that they go to market, right? It's when cookies go away, there's things that you could take, or marketers could take an approach of basically trying to replace cookies with other IDs that are still invasive. And there isn't a ton of scale around that. So the question is how do advertisers use technology to adopt the way they interact with consumers and meet them at their expectation levels without using any sort of personally identifiable information?
And is it a message to advertisers of, look, you've got to bring something more to the table for consumers now. You can't just invade their privacy or seem like you're invading their privacy. You have to get their permission on some level. And if you bring, but the good news is, I'm going to put some stuff out there. You tell me if it's true. Maybe the good news is, if you give them something that they want, they are willing to engage with advertisers.
It's got to be a mutually beneficial interaction, right? And so I think no one likes to be sold. They love to buy, right? So the concept of Inception, Leonardo DiCaprio, right? That movie's great, but the concept in marketing is really strong, because if the brand can connect with their consumer and give them an exchange value, I think they're very much okay with that.
What brands have you seen do this well, if you're able to call out some specifics?
I think, I don't want to call out any names.
You don't have to.
But I will say there's a categorization of brands that I think are doing it well. Ones that realize that there's a yes and approach to it. So like not siloed thinkers. Ones that say, because look, in the ad tech space, the entire industry unfortunately is built on this premise that IDs or cookies allow money to exchange hands. And so over the past years, as cookies have been deprecated, a lot of folks are like, IDs are going to solve it. Reality is they're not. People don't want IDs, the adoption is really low. So I think the brands that are going to do well they're realizing that IDs are great, but they also need to do something else. So a yes and approach being more collective in the way they go to market.
I love the idea of yes and as a devotee of improv comedy, which is where that statement kind of originally came from. And I believe you said you're based in Chicago, is that right?
Yeah,
which is
Second City.
The home of really great improv there. Speaking of ands, this entire show is basically all different kinds of technology and AI, right? AI is infusing everything that we're talking about. It's infusing many of my conversations here in the C Space Studio. And so I want to give you a chance to address that. How are you thinking about AI now?
I think AI has gotten an indirect rap in the space. Everyone talks about AI, but no one knows the difference between machine learning or deep learning, structured, unstructured data. I just feel like people talk about it because they feel like they have to. We've tried taking a step back on that because in our perspective, the main differentiation is the type of data that can be processed to help an advertiser make a decision. But the truth is I believe that in order for marketing, it's going to be a fundamental shift over the next years. Like 30 years of transacting on a single identifier that is no longer there, everything shifts. And so embracing technology and understanding how it processes data, I think is going to be AI, generative AI, large language models, things that can process tremendous amounts of data to get as precise as you can at scale is going to be really important. And the ad industry and brands need to start taking into consideration that at the forefront.
So if the industry is hurt or challenged by cookie deprecation, is it potentially getting tailwinds from AI? Maybe these things, I don't know if balance out is exactly the right term.
I think the opportunity is, I think it's just going to be a new reality and it's not going to be worse, right? That's look, I'm leaving a message for advertisers is once you embrace the reality and you know that technology can help you drive into that reality, it's not going to be worse. There's hope.
Yeah. Is AI going to be useful as kind of an observer of what consumers are doing? So it's not that necessarily that I almost want to think of it, because it's artificial intelligence, you can't exactly say that it's just like a human brain looking at it. But to kind of use that analogy, it's like a really powerful brain just looking at all these transactions, looking at all these things going on, and being able to piece together connections in ways that people might not have been able to.
So I think so, right? So and if I get too deep on this, just pull it out.
Sure.
But when I think about it, there's machine learning and deep learning, and there's the conscious and the unconscious is how I think about it. Machine learning does really well with the conscious. So decisions you make, right? That's only 5% of our brain. 95% of our brain is based on neural networks that we know nothing about, but when I go to that grocery store or when I'm breathing, like it's just happening and I pull for something, that's where AI I think is going to be really valuable. It's showing brands, marketers, consumers, the things that they didn't know to look for that help increase the value of any transaction or engagement.
You talked about a category of folks who are doing well.
Yes.
What about advertisers who are really struggling? Are there some common themes you see with the folks who are struggling to adapt, and maybe things you want to tell them?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, so it's almost the opposite of those that are doing well is they're siloed in thinking and that IDs will solve all, right? I have my team ask questions to advertisers. What is your privacy solution or cookie deprecation solution? Oh yeah, we have a solution, it's IDs. Great, that's going to cover 20% of the web, because guess what? IP addresses are being truncated and going away as well. And so the question becomes is like, what is it, like stop trying to recreate what consumers don't want. And I think the folks that struggle is they think they're going to be fine. They're not actually listening to what consumers are telling them that they're looking for. And once they realize that they have to pivot, they'll be in a good spot, but they're a little further behind.
Fill in the blank question for us. The future of our industry is blank.
Promising, which is a BS answer, right? But I'll tell you why I think it's promising is because it's gonna, with cookies by the end of this year being deprecated, consumers will regain trust, I believe, in the way when they see an ad, they're not gonna be as skeptical about it. So I think maybe it's a reset or that allows consumers and brands to reset their relationship of how they're receiving and engaging with content and media and messaging.
And do you think that takes time on the psychological front for the consumers? Even if the technology just changes today, which as you know is very challenging, as a transition over time. People have been trained to expect, like you said, if I'm talking, then Instagram's going to show me an ad for the thing I'm talking about. So how is it a factor as much of human psychology and retraining consumers?
Yeah, it really is. I think human psychology is fascinating, right? And the key behind it is it takes time and it takes multiple data points, right? With one data, like you think about consumer reviews, I think are fascinating because it's very much psychological. No one raves about a 3. You write a review when it's a 1 or a 5.
That's true.
Right? And so in order for it to be a review on something, there needs to be multiple 3s or the 5 has to be so good. Advertisers have the opportunity to now give them 5s. And if they miss on those 5s, it won't change as expedited with consumer behavior. But if they give them a 5s, I think they will.
Well, thank you for being a solid 5 interview for us here in the C Space Studio. Patrick Goot of Adlook US, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks so much. Appreciate the time.
And we appreciate you watching. I am James Kotecki, your host for interviews here in the C Space Studio at CES 2024. So many great conversations are on the way. Keep it right here.